Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Can I welcome you to this meeting of People in Health Scrutiny on the 30th of July. We have a few people online, so good morning to you all, and to you, Steve. Glad to see you here as well, and to you, Leslie. Who else can I see? Lots of names. Member of the committee, Chris Kipax, as well.
Good morning.
If anyone who is attending virtually, if you do wish to speak, can you raise your virtual hand, please? And my vice chairman for the day, Carol Jones. Morning, Jane.
Morning.
Will take note.
Really sorry, Chairman.
Very pleased to have you there, but I will stand you down as vice chairman this morning, and I really hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so with that, I will move on. We have apologies from members of the committee, Barry Gorringe, Carl Wood, and as we've just seen, Jane and Chris are attending remotely. So, as is usual, members of the committee, if you have any declarations of interest, this is your opportunity. If there's nothing at the moment, if it does become apparent during the meeting, if you can let us know straight away, we'll deal with it then. So make sure that we're all above board. You have the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of June. You will notice that amended minutes did come out in the last day or so. So members, are you happy to confirm the amended minutes?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep.
Thank you. I'll sign those at the end of the meeting. We have no public participation today, but we do have one question from members, and that's Councillor John Orrell, who is concerned about issues within the NHS at the moment. Let's jump to that. Okay, phone system. So John's question was obviously concern about some of the changes within the NHS and 2P. I don't intend to read his question out. It's there as part of the pack. John cannot be here today, so it's quite a long response because it's quite detailed, explaining how the NHS are dealing with the issue. But it is a very positive response, and I think they've gone above and beyond what is required in law to make sure that staff are looked after. But the full detail is in the response, which will be circulated after the meeting. Okay. We don't have any urgent items, which I'm sure you'll be pleased about. So that takes us on to our first substantive report today, and that's Birth to Settled Adulthood, the Independent Chair's report. And I'm very pleased to welcome the Independent Chair, Celia Bafton, to us this morning. She'll give you just a quick overview of some of the key issues of the report and what she's hoping to get from today, and then we'll be over to you guys for questions. Cecilia.
Thank you. Just to introduce myself, I am an independent chair, so that means I'm not NHS, I'm not a council employee, and I'm neither an elected representative, so I am a truly independent chair. And really my role as an independent chair is really to help to act as a strategic advisor to the direction of the programme, act as a critical friend, and sort of helping with the partnership and of the programme, as well as monitoring. And the other part of that is obviously also to make sure that the voices of those young people for whom our service is set up are heard throughout the programme. You've seen the report. I think you know this isn't an operational report. There was a full operational report given last time and from the health team. So really what I'm looking at it as is from a chair's perspective, and just to remind everyone that this is a really complex sort of transformation programme. It really is truly about transformation. And it does require full integrated work across the service, both within the council, children's and adults, with education, with employment, with housing, and with our health service, and certainly work beyond that into our communities. And our work is guided by the outcomes framework, which I hope you've all seen. Those statements that have been given to us by the children and the young people actually help us understand what it is that they are trying to get at, what they want out of them. And it does require, as I say, multidisciplinary working. And the complexity of it, actually, as coming in as chair, it looks relatively straightforward, but as you dig into it, and people, over the years, you can see why it has become so complex. There are so many aspects to this. And I just wanted to pick out a few of those things for you. In terms of the programme itself, B2SA, describes a number of services. It's sort of an umbrella term for a number of services that start from 0 and go on to 25 or beyond. It's trying to work to the needs of the individual who we're working with. It starts with Best Start in Life, and I think when we look at what the NHS is focused on in the 10-year plan, that idea of being preventive, getting into those early settings and helping people stay healthy is a key part of that. It looks at young carers as well as and families, as well as the individuals themselves. A core part of it, and a lot of what gets talked about, is the Preparing for Adulthood team, the team who actually help us understand what these individuals are going to need in their future lives, and trying to get ahead of the game with those. It gets talked about as that sort of cliff edge at 18 going into adults. I think we've smoothed that pathway for this cohort of young people now. But we need to get better at planning for their needs and planning at 14 if that's something that they're capable and willing to do. And I think that's a big part of the programme that people hear about. But it's also helping us to get ahead of the costs of future delivery. And the link into our housing teams and colleagues at that stage is fundamental to that, making sure that we're planning ahead for their needs. I was just 2 weeks ago in the Dorchester Road Transitions House, talking with the team there and understanding how 4 young people who are really helping us, to build what that future is going to look like for them. They're the ones who are helping direct, what it is that they need. They've been selected to go into that accommodation, and they're living independently in a way that perhaps they might not have thought that they would ever be able to do. They are making choices about their future lives that are helping us also to reduce our packages of care, but they're also deciding on what they want to do in future life. And that's really starts to give those outcomes, showcases what good looks like for our people. And it's really exciting to see that happening for real. It's not a program on a piece of paper, and we're seeing a lot of complexity, actually getting in there and understanding that this is happening for real with these young people. And they are helping to give us feedback on what good looks like. And I think that's a key part of that. There are examples in that report, as you've seen. I, as chair, focus on risk. What are the risks to delivery? And chair has mentioned one, obviously the NHS changes and the impact that might have to either commitment or funding or support for the programme. If I were to look at that, I'm not seeing any lack of commitment. I'm seeing, as we speak, the B2SA programme has gone to the system executive group to actually, again, for them to further understand that programme. Patricia Miller, who is the vice chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, but also CEO at NHS Dorset, ICB, she's, has declared commitment to this programme. But also on the ground, we're seeing changes in the way that people are working, and I think if there are questions about that, I'd be happy to take those as we move on. Increasing complexity is the second risk that I think that we have. Young people actually becoming, the number of young people who have special educational needs, who have neurodiversity, who will fall into this cohort nationally is growing. So, and that will necessarily mean, more complexity means generally more cost, unless we can get ahead of the game, unless we can start to plan for those individuals. And a part of our work that we need to do more on is looking at the requirements for individuals with neurodiversity, those autism, ADHD, versus learning difficulties. They're quite different, but sometimes get lumped together. So how do we separate those out as we're working towards those plans? And my third risk, if I were to pick one, is out of what I presented there, is data. We need to have a data-driven service. Everything that we do needs data. Everything that we do requires us to understand what's going on, such that teams can plan for the future. And it's great to see how adults and children have developed systems. Some of it's a bit of a workaround on our systems because of regulations, but those are starting to work together. But the dashboards that we need in order to do the early planning, for example, for housing demonstrated to us that they have some good data, but is it sufficient to make sure that we're planning effectively? General practice, Dorset Care Record, DICE, we have a lot of systems. Are they all talking to each other? They all talk about being focused on the individual, which they may be, but if I always think about this as an individual in the middle of this lovely system, but then there's an individual in the middle of this lovely system, and there's an individual in the middle of this lovely system. And if are there sufficient overlaps? Is there sufficient integration or interoperability or some oversight or something that says that we're seeing the whole picture for this individual? Because when it comes back down to it, the experience of talking to the management, the workers in the Dorchester Roadhouse, what I observed was someone who had lived with those individuals for a period of time because they were supporting them in that living accommodation, who really understood what those individuals need. Describing an individual who actually doesn't need so much support and could move on to this type of accommodation. This person is going to need support and so the link to making sure that we have that person, that key worker, that family worker who really understands that individual, I think is the direction of travel. It is the best way to deliver it, but they also need to understand the data and see that as part of the bigger picture. So, sorry, so future plans, there's a lot of them, as you saw previously, and in this plan. Key worker service is something we're focusing on immediately, simply because of the potential cost, of saving young people actually having to have mental health hospitalisation. We need to get ahead of that game. The healthcare roadmap, it's there in the implementation group. We need to see that, publish that and get that out so more people can see what's going on there. I'd love to do more communication. This is one great way of communicating, but getting it out such that people understand what's going on with this service. We often are reticent in communicating because we don't want to raise expectations. But actually just talking about what we're doing can often help people understand where we're going and maybe give us feedback and input. We will be getting feedback from those service users through, with Oxford Brooks, I think it is, who's been asked to come in and help us make sure that we're getting feedback. That's a survey, but that's maybe a one-off, but we're also taking feedback from young people as we go. And, it's the connecting to work is the final bit that I really, really want to get further into. There's some great work going on with our teams at the moment. How can we do more? Because we have a lot of young people who have the potential to work. If we can understand their needs early enough, work with employers, work with colleges and schools, we can more likely get them into something that support them into work where they can have further independence in the way that this programme is designed to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That is a real canter through, but I think you've also shown just how important this whole programme is. And if we get it fully embedded right across the piece, it will make such a difference to a lot of young people's lives.
Yes.
And hopefully save us some time and angst as well.
And money.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I know Paul is always reminding me of the young people. and their voices, but also reminding me that, you know, we've got value for money to you know, and we have to make sure that everything that we do offers that. So
it's making sure the telescope's the right way around, isn't it? The key outcome's got to be the young people, but we can't ignore the financial cost to it all.
Yes.
But we can't be driven purely by financial cost.
yes,
Which is why we need the data.
Yeah.
yes.
So I've already got
Jane.
hands up. Okay, Jane, then Chris, please.
Thanks very much, Chairman, and thank you, Cecilia. And I'm really sorry I'm not there this morning. And thank you for running through that and picking out those key points and the risks as you see them. I noticed that when you were talking about the communication side, that both Leslie and I were nodding vigorously, because that's an area that I think we need to absolutely improve on in terms of communicating out, you know, what this program is about, what it's been doing, what it's been achieving, but also what you hope for in the future, which I think, you know, and managing those some expectations as well, which I think Leslie will agree with me on. Data is key. Data is everything. You know, that's so fundamental in everything that we do, and you'll know about our future council, which is a massive piece of work that's we're undergoing at the moment. That's something that's going to roll out over the years. Work is already starting, and I'm wondering if the Birth to Settled Adulthood project is feeding into, and I'm sure it is, and has been part of those conversations, because that whole crossover of data sharing and system speaking is fundamental. Obviously, outside partners, that's a little bit more complicated because they're on a whole other system, but we do have the DICE and we do have the Dorset Care Record. There is all that information. I'd be very interested to see how how the connecting into work is going to look, because that's really fundamental. You know, we can do an awful lot to support and help our young people as they move into adulthood, with a lot of things that the council does and the council is responsible for, and the NHS are. But in terms of, you know, actual, you know, getting out into the world and working and being part of and having that fulfillment, because that's what working is about, I think we have not always had the best options available for young people within this cohort. So I hope to see you know, some real progress in that area. That's not to say there aren't very good things going on, and I know there are, but there's not enough of it, and there's not enough choice, I think. And our people out there with businesses, you know, and tapping into those. And I know, Cecilia, that's your forte. You know, to be brave and to you know, really seriously consider. And I know there have been attempts at doing that, but I'm not sure how well they've worked in the past. So I've got other questions, but I don't want to take up everybody else's time. So thank you, Cecilia, and everyone there.
Thank you. I mean, communications is going to be something that we will focus on more. I think that there's been webinars internally now, such that the staff teams are now appraised of what's going on. It's being brave and actually going out and talking about what we're doing, not necessarily what we've done. And I think that is a challenge for people, because they want to be able to showcase, this is what we did, and this is what success looks like. That's traditionally how one communicates. I think today there is a move towards people just want to know what's going on. How does it work? How do I get involved? You know, and we also have to protect these young people. You know, we can't talk about them without their permission. But how do we get their voices into this communication? It's hard, but it's not impossible, Jane. So I think with the Parent Carer Council's help, we can probably do, even more with parents and carers as well, to be able to communicate. Connecting to work, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that the LEP and the careers team now that's transitioned into the council team focus very much on is disability confident employers. One of the challenges for getting young people who have additional needs into a workplace environment is the fear of the employer that they don't know what they're dealing with. And, it's how do I manage that? What if something goes wrong? The risk of taking on someone. There is, you've got all of that wonderful ambition, and yes, we'd love to, but it's again, so training and working with employers to be confident about addressing individuals' needs. There have been some great, we do have some great people in Dorset who do this exceptionally well, but it's, as Jane says, there's not enough of it going on, and perhaps there is a fear of, in a conversation with an employer, they say, well, what do they want? And I said, well, have you asked them? Who are they? It's just, it's that vague term, and it's trying to get down to, okay, well, how do we identify what people want to do early enough? And as Jane says, we've got some great examples, individuals who are, indicating that they want to be in the fire service, perhaps not being able to go as far as being a fire person climbing a ladder and rescuing someone, but a real key member of the team by supporting, cleaning the engines, packing the kit, organising things, being part of the team in a way that nobody had actually thought about until they actually sat down and said, well, we do need help in this regard. Let's work out what this person can do, not focusing on all the things that they can't do. And it's that change in dynamic with employers. They actually, yes, what we need is someone who will reliably turn up and responsibly do their job and commit to being here and wants to be part of our team. What more can an employer ask for? So yeah, I think there's definitely more to do, but I do see some good starts, and the government's Connect to Work programme, which I know Dorset is really going to be a good drive to help us with that.
I can see a real link coming with some of the local business networks where they have, meetings and so on. Certainly in the area I represent, there's a meeting once a month and they have a speaker.
Yeah.
So maybe after the meeting we can talk about perhaps inviting you as a speaker to speak to local businesses about what the opportunities could be.
I'd love to. And again, this is the opportunity I feel being here today, is actually talking to councillors, say, what do you want? How do I get this out there? How do we actually communicate? You're in the communities far more than I am. So if there are opportunities to speak, that would be brilliant. Yes, please.
We're going to move on now. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Councillor Chris Kippax, Yetminster Ward. I think Jane has taken most, or you've answered most of the questions that Jane has asked, which were in my sights, but just particularly then about the numbers of people we're talking about coming who need or who aspire to work, and actually what can be done, just to follow your challenge, if you like, what can be done to get the message out there that, there are willing people who are very able and can, with help and support, can actually very, fulfill a lot of potential. What more can we do? But perhaps to start with, what's the scale of the numbers of people we're talking about at any one time?
I don't know how many people we're looking at to put into workplace. I think we've got, from the numbers that I'd seen, we have about 260 people in this cohort who are 18 to 25. So you might consider those to be in the work age, but how many of them are capable of work, I really don't know. And again, I think this comes back to data. I don't know. But part of the preparation for adulthood planning will be looking at the aspirations of those young people, so we will get sight of that. So that will be part of the data we'll see. So it's a good question, Chris. I don't know the full scale of it. How do we do more? The chambers are fully aware, and I know they engage with confidence employment. I think bids, any local bids, town councils, where these are the places perhaps where we can talk about the programme and identify that there are people available for work. But also the careers team. We have a very strong and active careers team who can help. They have employer engagement programs that they operate, and in those employer engagement programs, they're able to bring people together.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, chambers you mentioned. It's certainly a point that occurred to me, or a sort of focus that occurred to me. And we need those of us who are, town councillors, as well as Dorset Council councillors, need to be proactive in trying to engage with them locally. Is there readily available sort of literature or information we can provide?
I don't know. I look to colleagues. We have information about the programs that we're running, but not about the individuals. I think what we need is it's almost, when you're doing careers, you're looking at matching. So what we need, I think, from those sorts of meetings is, what is the need in our communities? What sort of jobs are available that could be done by individuals who have perhaps some special needs? And then we can start to bring that back into our teams here, who can do some of that connection and maybe get some work experiences. Careers, one of the best things about the careers service in this space is the fact that we get young people and teachers into work environments so they can see what work's about, what type of work is needed, and they can then help with doing that matching. And I think matching people up such that you can meet their aspirations is key.
Thank you. That's very helpful. A lot of food for thought there, which I'll be keen to follow up on outside of the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think Julia wanted to come in.
If I
Julia,
may.
can you just say?
Yes, of course. My name's Julia Ingram. I'm the Corporate Director for Adult Social Care Operations. Just wanted to advise Councillor Kepax, if he was not aware, that we do collate the data on the number of people between the ages of 18 to 25 and then 18 to 64 who are in employment or in training and education. And I'd be happy to go through that information at any point with any of the councillors if they require. The performance levels are not where we want them to be. It's an area where we want to improve, but it is one of the areas that we routinely report as part of our senior leadership team scorecard. So again, be more than happy. And obviously the beauty of this particular work stream is that by working in the birth to settled adulthood arena, we've got an opportunity to start that ambition so much earlier than we did when we had separate services. So I'm hopeful that those statistics will improve over the life of this programme.
Paula Golding, I'm Corporate Director of Care and Protection. Just to add to what Julian said, really, we've got Simon Fraser Brown's team, who are the EAT team, and they support the Dorset Careers Hub, and they've had some specific events. And there's lots of work being done around looking at things like apprenticeships and other opportunities for our disabled young people. So there's always further work we can do, but we regularly report on our numbers beat, and it's coming later. Simon will be joining us later.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Robinson, see you've got your hand up. I have got a long list of speakers, but are you responding to the current point that's being discussed?
I am, yes, very briefly. Just a
Okay.
suggestion with regards to employment and chambers of commerce. It might be useful to engage some ambassadors to work on your behalf within the chambers of commerce, rather than just present them constantly with information. I find that having someone on the inside is often more effective than just talking to them from the outside.
Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, my next speaker is Bridget.
Councillor Bridget Barwell at Bridport Ward. I've just got two questions. On page 12, 1.2, it says that the integrated service delivery works across the age range and is guided by the outcomes framework. There's a set of descriptors that tell us what good looks like, bearing in mind that we have very high aspirations and high expectations for our children and young people. Why are we not looking at what outstanding looks like?
A good question. Is again, you have to start somewhere, and I must admit, when you look at the aspiration in that framework, it's just it's lovely because it's very, very focused on the individual. I feel safe, I feel listened to, I am liked and I feel included. I mean, given where we are as compared to what's going on in other parts of the country, I think this is excellent. But again, I've used the term of what good looks like because that tends to be when I'm looking at a business, I want to know where they're going. What does good look like? And good looks like us achieving this. And yes, if we did, it would be excellent.
Okay, thank you. And then in 1.3, it talks about you mentioned it about siloed service teams and reports of interventions are captured in separate databases. So I think as a council, we are working towards an integrated database, are we not, with the NHS and all the other services together, so that we have access to a full range of data. Well, our colleagues mainly have a full range of data.
In an ideal world, that's absolutely where we're at. In terms of how to get there, it's a big ask. The teams have done some great work in getting just children's and adults and data visible to those who need it. There's some great, and that's been extra training required for individuals to do that, and workarounds that needed to be approved. So even getting that piece working together. As I described earlier in my sort of multiple daisy wheels about things, but it's everyone's challenge. It's trying to get these things to work together. We have DICE, which is our insight system, which does have a look across from a public health perspective. Again, probably the best in the country, as many people would say. We have health systems, however, that within a hospital setting, within a GP setting, within that don't necessarily talk to each other. So we will have an integrated system coming on the health side of things, but that's going to take a little while. And then integrating that in with what individuals have in their social care record, and then how that links to primary care. It's our direction of travel, but we've got to pick out the things that are going to help us the most. And I think getting the children's and adults together first, and then making sure we have at least sight of, and if not integration with those for this cohort. I think that's going to be hard enough in this short term, but in the long term, wouldn't it be lovely to have interoperable data? It's been, I used to work for a company called Tunstall, and again, we were telehealth and telecare, and even those two systems didn't talk together. It's everybody's holy grail, but the NHS hasn't even managed to do it for themselves yet. So it's also trying to do it on its own is going to be a challenge, but we're up for it.
I think my word would be willingness of services. I've been in this game for over 50 years within education. I'm still waiting to be able to work comprehensively with social services.
And you bring up that's a brilliant point, because it's not just social care, adults and children's and health. It is education, it is housing, it's all of the things that we get involved in. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
You've got everybody at it now. I've got Sarah Howard from the NHS and Paul Golding that want to speak. So if I go to Sarah first.
Thank you, Chair. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Howard, I'm Deputy Director of Place for NHS Dorset, ICB. I just wanted to comment, if I may, on the siloed service piece. And I think that is something we recognise both in children's services and adult services alike. And is a big problem. But I just wanted to bring into the conversation the work that is taking place, focusing on integrated neighbourhood teams and neighbourhood health. And also multidisciplinary kind of teams and multidisciplinary working, particularly focused on children and young people with complex needs. And I think although it's early days, and in some respects we're almost trying to recreate what we've lost over a number of years, because some of these ways of working we've seen it working really well kind of in the past. And like most things, particularly in the health world, things kind of come and go out of fashion. But we're absolutely now looking again at how we really enhance that multidisciplinary, integrated way of working. And I think that will really help in this space. And I think bringing in education and thinking about the housing opportunities within that as well will be really important, and you know, an aspiration for the individuals looking at that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Paula Golding, Corporate Director of Crime Protection. I think it's a national issue, and we've certainly found it through the Pathfinder work that we've done at DfE, and we've worked closely with the DfE around looking at some national principles for suppliers around how the systems can be enabled to be better integrated and support integration. But locally, we're absolutely committed to looking at any ways that we can work around those national challenges to share information appropriately, have that shared data, and work together to improve the way that we support our children.
I'm going to have to move on because I've got
Sally and Andy.
yeah. So in order, I've got Vice Chairman. Jake, can I come back to you at the end because you've already had one bite, and then Sally and Andy. Okay, so Carol.
Right, no, thank you, Carol Jones, Stonminster Newton. I'm just really pleased you're an independent chair, because it's so easy to be caught in a culture of either council or health, and it's quite refreshing to have somebody look over it both, because that way I think you would be able to identify what you believe the greatest challenges are far more easily and unpick it from there. But I'm interested in the increasing complexity. Do you feel that an earlier diagnosis would be useful in the longer term in terms of saving costs, time, or having a clearer direction of travel? I'm just wondering what you feel in that respect when it comes to a diagnosis, because I know so many parents, they struggle so hard to get something for their child, and I'm wondering what your views are on that.
I'm not a medical doctor.
No.
So starting with that premise, I am not a medical doctor, and I would say, from what I'm looking across the system, we are over medicalizing.
Yes.
A lot of conditions which are just normal childhood development issues. And the challenge we have, and this is where the work needs to go into looking more at autism, ADHD, and how that fits in and how we deal with it. Issues related to clear disabilities, I think, is useful to get an early sight of those. Because if there's an early sight of whether it's a visual impairment, physical impairment, some form of learning difficulty, I think we can lean in very early on and give those individuals the best start in life and plan for them. Other aspects of it, I think, is less clear. And I do recognise there's a lot on the internet, there's a lot of pressure on parents to get that label. And I don't personally think it's that helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's helping to address what can this child do.
Yes.
Focus on their positive things that they can do. And I would say give them boundaries so they know what good looks like. And, from an educational perspective, setting children, helping them understand, what they can do, work with what they can do, and then help parents with that. But that's jolly hard.
Yes.
And the pressure to get a label comes with the pressure to get additional funding or support or aspects of that. And I can understand why parents do that.
Yeah.
But we need, and this is where the Parent Carers Council is very supportive in trying to help parents understand, I think, that a focus on need and a focus on what they can do is probably better than a pressure for a diagnosis. It's a personal view. Clinically, other clinicians will make their own decision on that.
Do you know what the average age is of youngsters coming into the programme at all? I'm just wondering if there's a certain age demographic that first come to like in this programme.
I don't know if anyone does.
I think an average age is really difficult because it's a birth to settled adulthood. So
yes.
We do work with very young children. We have our best start in life advisors that are working with young children that have got really complex needs. But the range of need within birth to settled adulthood, sometimes you won't know until later.
I'm sure, but I think actually knowing at what age they're likely to come in at, it may well be that there are interventions that can perhaps happen before they come in that mean that they might not necessarily have to come in. And I'm thinking
Yeah.
perhaps of really working more closely with family hubs, with a lot of, you know, interventions, programs, help, support. That could be really quite transformational to perhaps stop some of those children coming into your program.
I think family hubs is absolutely a real key area for us to focus, because actually, if you're an isolated parent, you often don't know.
Yes, you don't know.
Whereas if you're in with other parents and you can discuss what's going on and with professionals and get advice, as you're saying at that early stage, it may stop some of the worry. It may
Yes,
help you see, well,
exactly.
actually, yeah, that's what kids do at that age.
Mm.
Whereas we have a lot of individuals who are isolated from extended families, and they're not able to get the advice that perhaps you would have historically had. Sorry, I'll leave it to my.
Yeah, I think I've got Beth, Paula and Paul, but
Oh God,
sorry.
sorry.
Move down the line.
We may all say similar things. It's a good question because I think it is a contested area, that increased complexity or not. And I was just looking at ADCS policy group this week, and there was a very renowned speaker there challenging the concept of increased complexity. I sent that to you, Claire, yesterday. So that's why that's a good question. And I just wanted to highlight, was probably what Beth or Paul was going to say, that I think the skills, training and development of professionals that work with children that may or may not have additional needs is a really important aspect of this. And we are working as part of our sort of SEND work, actually, which is similar cohorts in our early years provisions to skill up our staff to get alongside children at the earliest stage that might have additional needs, and also get alongside the staff to help the staff understand and assess those needs, and also to meet those needs without necessarily the need to go to the diagnosis or some kind of extra specialist sort of provision. And that work we're doing so far is really working, and we're also working with parents of those children to give them some confidence that their children's needs can be met in the early years division. So we're looking at, you know, upscaling the work. Another thing that was discussed at that ADCS policy group this week is about you know, training up. So yeah, and I've got to say I'm Paul Dempsey.
You're acting CEO this week, Paul.
At Disabled Children, we absolutely promote the continuum of needs. So early support, family hubs. They absolutely want to make those as accessible and available to our disabled children at the earliest point, because if we can meet need earlier, we know that can manage and support families to meet needs for longer. So just wanted to reassure you that we do absolutely do that in the front door. We do that in our locality teams, and lots of our disabled children don't sit in B2SA. They sit in our locality teams, in our early support, and in our family help teams. So and they are, we work with them whole family. We work with them alongside their siblings. So not all disabled children sit in B2SA, but B2SA can provide consultation and support around some of that expertise to meet need. So just wanted to reassure you that that is the case.
It was just really to reiterate what Paul and Paula have already said, but the work that we've been doing with Empower is very much focused on that early intervention. And it's about developing expertise in mainstream settings, but also Leslie from DPCC has been involved in terms of that, creating confidence in parents that the needs of their child could be met early within a mainstream setting. And if they can't be met within a mainstream setting, you know, what the journey for that child would look like in specialist settings. So that's a very targeted piece of work that we've done as a result of identifying, you know, that needs are coming through early. And that work has been really successful.
And I think the one element that we haven't really touched on is the advances in medicine, where we've got youngsters that perhaps 5-10 years ago that wouldn't survive are now surviving with increasingly complex needs.
Yeah, and our special schools are really recognising that, and they're kind of very much sort of 3 of our special schools who maybe have less children potentially with sort of severe and multiple learning difficulties are recognising now specialist provision need to shift to meet greater need. So it's kind of a distance kind of view.
Thank you. Yeah, please do.
Okay. So Sally, please.
Hello, Councillor Sally from Chettlebank Ward. My question really is around about the employer aspect of things and being able to get young people into workplaces. Do we have anyone within the team who goes in and speaks to people or helps companies, especially small companies, look at what they actually need to do and explain to them what it entails? Because I think sometimes employers are reticent to take somebody on because they're concerned about the responsibility, the workload. Am I going to have to have wide doors everywhere? Am I going to have all these kind of facilities that I don't have within my environment? And actually, very often, the smaller work environments are quite a nice place for someone to work because it isn't overwhelming if you struggle with large groups, etc. And you often will get that lovely support. And certainly, I'm on the west side of Dorset, where we don't really have an awful lot of large employers. And it would be really nice for the young people within that environment to actually have access to a service rather than having to travel somewhere like Weymouth or Dorchester or Sherborne, etc. for those kind of things. So is there anything in place at all to sort of reassure and guide employers?
Yes. Is it broad enough? Does it reach far enough? Probably not. I mean, as Paul has been talking about, the special educational needs careers fairs that have been held, that do highlight that both to employers and to young people. They do try and explain the opportunities that are available, but yeah, I'm certain that there are places where that hasn't gone yet. But yes, the careers team are fab, and that's exactly what they should be able to do. So I would recommend you, if you want to do something in your local area, talk to your careers team and get them to have a session down with you.
Andy, you've been very patient.
No, thank you, Chair. Councillor Andy Todd, Coal Hill, Wimborne Minster East. My question has changed about 17 times. And I apologise, but this is a much longer conversation. Spend all day talking.
I'll call you on that.
When you witness a young person going into a supportive environment for the first time, and the veil is lifted from their eyes and they relax and trust, you see them see the world and that it is accessible to them. And you do not want that to be taken away from them. You want them to be able to go out and achieve because you see that they believe that they can do it. So I look at that and I look to say, what stops it from going on? So they're here, they're open, they want to go on. What is it that is stopping them from achieving that next step, from going on to settled adult? What is it that we can do to help them? And what is it that was stopping them from being in that place in the first place? So this is where my question changed. So I look at mainstream education and I ask the question, and you can answer this. Are mainstream education at this point not doing sufficient to provide them with that environment where they can thrive today? Because if we can keep them within mainstream education, albeit with additional reasonable adjustments in place to help them, more cost effective for us as a council, and it's probably better for them and their social interactions going forward. But then what is it that stops them from going on after, both with education and after going into work afterwards? So I look to say, are we providing them with qualifications and career progression support, for example, online via online courses? I see a lot of children who worry about the anxiety about the most simple things, like what if I make all the horrible mistakes on my first day? How do we pre-arm those children to know that they are equipped to go in on the first day, that they are more than good enough to go in and do the job on the first day? I'm just interested to know, are we using every tool in the toolbox? Because communication and training has changed over the last 20 years. And I see children learning via YouTube all the time. They've taught me to learn via YouTube as well. And I just wonder if those sorts of resources are being employed as
Not the rubbish.
well. Yes, that's too.
I'm not an educational specialist. We have one here, but again, what are the barriers? Self-belief, you know, and opportunity are often the barriers. You know, having seen what we've done to support individuals in Dorchester Road and then taking that first step. Again, there's risk involved. Parents must feel that they're, you know, that they don't want their children at risk because they're responsible for them. Well, they are up to a certain age, then they're adults. You know, are they allowed to go on after that? Are we doing enough? We're doing a heck of a lot, but I'm always certain that there's more to do. Having seen how, again, in that environment, volunteers and workers were helping young people to navigate, filling in forms, accessing things on the internet, applying for jobs, applying for different aspects, doing their shopping online, you know, those sorts of things. It's all happening, but when we talk about I think it has to be this person and looking at that individual and really saying, how does we work out what this person can do, and how do we focus to making a plan that helps them live their best life. But from an education perspective, I don't know if there's, you know, there's always more you can do. Mainstream schools, as I understand them, are not don't have the amount of money necessary to perhaps to be able to support needs in schools.
If you could, sorry, Chair, if I could change one thing, what would it be?
Change one thing.
Make one thing more available.
I'll have a think about that whilst I get an answer on.
So, Beth Whitaker, Interim Corporate Director, Education and Learning. You've said lots of things there, so I'm going to try and pick out a few of them. So, just with regards to, you know, it really is about meeting need, whether a child has an EHCP or not. And we've been doing a lot of work, particularly in the last 2 years, with our schools, with our mainstream settings specifically. So we have therapeutic thinking training, which is now open to all schools in Dorset, which really does, you know, you talked about that child or young person's experience of going into school and feeling safe, and, you know, how important that is for them to be able to thrive. So therapeutic thinking training very much focuses on that, focuses on staff approach to children and young people and how we can manage that. We've also got outplan training, which we've brought in the last year, which is very specifically around how staff and adults communicate, particularly with neurodiverse young people, and how, you know, sometimes miscommunications can lead to misunderstandings and can lead to upset, and how we kind of manage that. We've got our Autism in Schools project. We've also got our emotionally based school avoidance training, which is for parents and for staff in schools. We've got developmental play training. There's a lot of training that is actually taking place. But also in terms of the funding, we've put actually quite a lot of funding into our mainstream schools to support those children with additional needs. And alongside that, we've also produced a toolkit, which is in development, as to how you might best deploy that funding to meet the needs of those children. So sometimes it might, you know, there may be a perception that bringing in a teaching assistant is the thing that is needed for that young person, but actually there's lots of other creative ways and interventions that can be brought in to support that young person. Something that is really exciting and that is changing, particularly just in terms of those kind of future opportunities, is some of the work that Wayne's College are doing. They are revising their offer for all of their young people with special educational needs and disabilities. They're broadening their curriculum offer quite significantly, so that instead of following what might be more of a kind of SEND specific pathway, they will have the opportunity to access most of the other curriculum areas, and sometimes accessing those without necessarily having to have particular entry qualifications. And then once they are on that programme, they will also have a bespoke wraparound kind of pastoral care support package and specific base that will meet the needs of those young people. So that's really exciting work. And also our special schools are doing, you know, a lot more outreach work. They're approaching us around models. We're looking at a satellite special school model that we can adapt into Dorset, and our resource provisions as well, which enables us to have that kind of specialist staff expertise, but on a mainstream site with small groups, that then enables those young people who have got specific needs to access a mainstream setting, and to, you know, to have a kind of mixed timetable between a specialist resource provision and the facilities and everything else that is available within a mainstream school. So there is a lot of work that's going on, and it's really kind of gathered momentum in the last couple of years.
And this is what every time I go to a meeting, this is what it's like. There's a whole load of stuff going on, and you're saying my But if we could give more visibility, I think, to the successes of individuals who've come through this and who are out there, you know, seeing people with disabilities in communities clearly working, and just normalising it, and basically saying, you know, why do we have the special way of doing things? Some of our young people are pushing back and saying, you know, I'm not in that group, I want to be in this group, you know, I don't, you know. Well, why shouldn't they? We all make choices. Let's make it more normal. So I think if that's what I could get out of this is, and when you look at what children need in terms of support through school, every child needs support. Every child gets anxious at some time. Every child needs somebody who can just be there to, you know, let's make it a place where children know that they're supported as well. Wants to come in? Oh, sorry, Paul.
Just a straight answer to the question of should the mainstream sector, education sector, be doing more? Yes, would be my answer. That is our strategy, inclusion, local children in local schools. It's not meant, when I say yes, as a criticism of those mainstream settings, because we need to do as much as we can to support those mainstream settings, which we are doing, and we'll do more, as Beth was saying about funding. It is the direction of travel for the national government to support inclusion in mainstream schools. The work that we're doing, that both Beth and I were referring to earlier, which is with Empower, where we're working with settings and with children and young people, that we're identifying children in specialist provision whose needs don't merit them being in specialist provision by a long way. And I would say that that is a barrier to children and young people going on to be successful. If they have been excluded from mainstream community and mainstream school for a long time when they didn't need to be, I don't think that is going to be conducive to them being independent and successful in careers.
Children to fall into.
Yes.
I'm going to move on now. Got Jane and then Bridget again, and then I'm going to think it's time to move
Wrap
on.
it up.
Yeah. Jane.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask about the feedback actually from young people and families who've been going through this programme, Birth to Settled Adulthood, and where you're seeing that, and what sort of responses, you know, are you getting, and is that something that, and you were talking about people who are working and how that could be communicated out, but also the actual experiences of this service, which was always just meant to be something that felt seamless for the individuals. That was the whole purpose, a seamless service for them. So understanding how they feel, how that's worked for them, I think would be, well, I would certainly like to know that, but I think in the wider context as well, it would be a helpful thing.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to do that survey that I mentioned earlier on with Oxford Brookes, but I don't know whether Leslie, you wanted to come in and address that as from the Parent Carers Council's perspective.
Thank you, Celia. Yes, Jane, I can say that there are some really good strong stories out there, and once again it comes down to that communication. Stories have been shared at various boards that I'm sitting across, including at health boards now, and I'm so pleased that I can say, not because Sarah's in the room, that there is I can see now joint working where projects that health are running are actually fitting seamlessly alongside key work that local authorities doing. But we need to get that information out there. And I know it's your and my passion about communication. So there is some really good, strong evidence now, and some of the quotes from parents whose children were on a line, on a pathway to disaster, who travelled this road with worry and cares and vulnerability, are now changing their route, and it's so good to hear. And there are cases out there that can be shared, and as I say, are being shared. But I sit here looking at the team sitting at that board table thinking, there are so many projects. You've just touched on a few. There are so many projects out there that are now starting to link up and now starting to think, oh, that means the graduated approach that you're working on is good. And it's all starting to come. But it's a slow journey. It's something that is going to be driven, obviously, by data, and I totally recognise that. But that data has got to include that young person's voice and the parent's voice saying, it's true, this is what it was like for this. But if you'd done that, it would have been better. And that's where it's important that we get the survey that's going out is in the right language and works for the parents to give true and honest feedback. Thank you. Sorry, witter on.
Very opportune and very welcome. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, so Bridget, last words.
Councillor Bridget Barwell, Bridport Ward. I just wanted to briefly pick up on what you said, Tony, about the babies that are now surviving beyond 24, 25 weeks and those medical complexities. I had the privilege many years ago of doing some research work with Professor Barry Carpenter, and he produced one of many very good reports. There's one in particular called Born Too Soon, and it discusses the challenges of prematurity for 21st century educators. And I just wanted to say really that, you know, it's really, really important for us that we know those babies are being born. So that is the data that we do hold and that we can do something about. And just, you know, can we be reassured that the opportunity groups, the portage support and all that is supporting those children and particularly the parents with such medical complexities.
Yeah, I think, you know, you raise a really interesting point, and certainly that's what all of our services are intended to do. Absolutely identify those children, either from before they're born, ideally, but that's when they're born. If they're born prematurely, obviously, you know, you don't really know that quickly.
Yeah, I think for babies that are born prematurely, they are well known within the health service in terms of their needs are picked up really early and they're monitored really closely. So I don't necessarily think that cohort would be the ones that we would miss because they're already in the system in terms of having that oversight from health, thinking into the best start in life. They're known. I guess it's the ones that aren't known that take longer for us to identify.
How do I sum all that up? If I go back 20 years, when I first started opening up conversations about transitions in the old Dorset County, you know, I think the fact that it's taken 20 years to get to this stage really evidences just how complex it is to try and bring everything together. It's something, you know, those of us as parents have always said, as a parent, you don't just look at one aspect of your child, you look at their health, you look at their education, you look at their well-being, you look at their opportunities for the future. And it's really hard as individual services to do that. So the more we do to bring that together, can only bring the benefit. So this isn't just a programme. This is, I think, is a blueprint for how we need to move our services forward, not just for these children, young people, and as they go into adulthood, but for the whole population as well. You know, that's the one thing I think we would all say. Please look at the the whole person in the whole situation. But that is another step forward. You know, this is the trailblazer. I think you've done a really good job in highlighting some of the risks and the issues. You know, the complexities around data sharing, I think, is going to be one of the biggest. You've talked about neurodiversity, not just disability, you know, and how demand is increasing and becoming more complex, and trying to fit in the right support at the right time for that individual so that they can get the best outcomes. So I think you've done across the board an amazing job. I know we were very critical at the beginning, and that was partially, I think, this committee's growth and understanding of what the programme entailed, and to see the way it's moving on all the time is fantastic. And I pick up the comment earlier, the challenge of being outstanding, not just good. We would all like to be outstanding, but
the admiration for it,
and it's a learning journey. So I will take good for now, but obviously the aspiration is always to be outstanding. And you talked also about communications and how key that is, and I think that's something that we can all take forward. And certainly I will have a conversation with you outside of the meeting about our local business network so that we can help upskill their knowledge. And I'm really pleased also with the way Weymouth College is making the difference. Again, that needs to be a trailblazer, because those of us that lived in the east of the county, we don't access Weymouth College, we access Bournemouth and Poole or Brockenhurst, and they are outside of our area. So there are real challenges there in getting that postcode lottery come parity right across, so that all of the children in our care thrive and succeed. But I think as a committee, I think you've just demonstrated very well the amount of progress that has been made. And you've been very open about the challenges still to come and the journey that we're on. So thank you very much for coming, Cecilia.
Very kind.
Can I just share one final comment?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Very quick. We do share Councillor Bulwer's ambitions to be outstanding in what we do. And we should have said actually that our short break children's home for disabled children was inspected recently, and we got the report in June, and that was graded outstanding overall. So in some aspects of the service, we're
already there.
We do well.
Fantastic. Another level of your cap.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's a great team, and they challenge me every time I come in. As I say, my brain has to be at every meeting. It's like, that's a good place to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get out.
I think George will do the honours. So while we have the word outstanding in our heads, I think it's the appropriate point to move on to item 8, which is the Ofsted Inspection and Action Plan. I was going to miss it. Congratulations on the outstanding result. Thank you. Well, are you going to take us through this, or
yes, I can do.
sorry,
Taylor, did you want to introduce it?
No, it's fine. I've already spoken about it at Cabinet.
Okay. I mean, it says everything in the report in terms, and hopefully you've all had a chance to read the Ofsted outcome. It's been around a little while now. We had our Ofsted inspection end of March, and the report came out on the 9th of May, so it's been around a little while. We got outstanding overall, outstanding for leadership, outstanding for health and protection, outstanding for children in care, and we got good for care leavers. But that is not a reflection of the practice of the of our staff in that space. They do exceptional work for our care leavers, but there is some further work for us to do around our care leaver offer, and that is the only action that is required as a result of the report. So we have the action plan, and we are working on that as we speak. And there are 4 key components to that. We are running a workshop with our care leavers tomorrow at Informal Corporate Parenting Board to look at the care leaver offer, making sure that that's co-produced. It has always been co-produced, but we want to strengthen that further. We are currently preparing a proposal around creating an equitable offer for council tax. One of the things that was picked up was that currently we offer council tax exemption for our care leavers that live in Dorset, but not for those that live outside of Dorset. And we have about 55% of young people, our care leavers, that don't live in Dorset. So we need to look at how we create an equitable offer. Reviewing and improving the offer for care experience young people who are parents or wanting to become parents. So we're doing some, we are looking at how we can have a prioritised offer through our family hubs. And through early support to offer prioritised parenting support to our young people, and making sure that those workers are trained in my shoes and have that really good understanding of what it means to be a care leaver and can provide that support. And then we've got the visibility and strengthening the visibility and availability of our offer, and we have done lots of promotion over the last couple of months about the offer as it is, both for our internally in terms of our own staff team, but also with our partners. And we will continue to do that as we strengthen the offer over the next few months with the work that we do tomorrow with our care leavers.
Beth, is there anything you wish to add?
No, I think Paul has covered it all. Yeah, we, very much involved just from a kind of inclusion perspective in that particular inspection. The main feature of education within that was around inclusion, around the work of our virtual school, which was, recognised as being outstanding. So, very positive.
Want to add anything at the stage, Paul? You don't have to, but you're very welcome.
No, not really. Only that we really need to co-produce this piece of work. The offer needs to be co-produced as far as possible with young people. And one of the key issues identified by Ofsted was the visibility to all care leavers of our offer. Some young people knew about our offer, some young people didn't. It depended on the quality of information given by the individual worker. So that was a key sort of requirement. We need to not let the position be that it depended which worker you had, what kind of offer you knew about. It's a challenge.
Thank you, Carol Jones, Mr. Newton. I'm just wondering what percentage of care leavers do not participate in the care leaver offer? Do you know?
So we've got 305 active care leavers out of 555 care leavers in total, aged 18 to 25. So the majority that aren't active are in the 22 to 25 cohort. All of our care leavers have access to the Care Leaver app, which has all of the details of the Care Leaver offer on it. And they are regularly reminded of that and get updates on that. But they have to choose to access it. So the Care Leaver offer covers a range of things. And some of that's some financial support, some of it is around links to gym, health and wellbeing, driving lessons. There's a whole range of things, but people will choose to access it when it's right for them. But part of the promotion is about making sure all of our staff, and it's not just about our care leavers, our PAs and care leavers team, it's our whole staff system. Everyone in the council, everyone outside the council needs to know what care leaver offer is. If you're working with a care leaver, have you thought about this, or this is available to you? And that's what we want in terms of visibility.
So if you say that the majority of those that aren't participating are aged 22, were they participating before the age of 22?
Yes, we have a high.
So they felt that they were able to.
So up to age 18 to 21, we have a statutory duty to provide care leaver support. but people can still choose not to. But
Yeah.
we have a high proportion of young people. I think it's like 98% of young people at 18 to 21 are in touch with us.
Right. And do you have enough personal advisors?
Yes, so
Yeah.
we have, we've got a team that have a reasonable caseload in terms of personal advisors. Even for those that aren't in touch, they can still contact us via the duty team. So they might not be active at the moment, but they can still make contact with. We encourage them to continue to make contact at points in which their circumstances might change.
Thank you. Well done, team.
Thank you.
Jane.
Oh,
Well,
Jane,
Jane,
sorry. You've only just put your hand up, Jane.
Well spotted. Thank you very much. Excellent. What a great team you've got there. You must have been really delighted. All that hard work, all those late nights, and all that slogging over many years. Getting to this point. That's fantastic. I've just got one question, and it's around housing oversight of care leavers. I just want to know what mechanisms you've got in place now to track and respond to your care leavers who are moving in and out of temporary accommodation or emergency accommodation.
Thank you, Jane. So Andrew's here as well, so I'm sure we have very, very low numbers. I think at the moment it's 0 in B&B. It's an area that we work very with adults services on, and has great oversight from Jane and her team with housing. I think I can't remember. We've got 90, I think it's 98% at the moment of care leavers that are deemed to be in suitable housing. So the ones that aren't are generally because they're in custody. We've got a small number that are in custody, and we very occasionally end up with 1 or 2 that might end up in B&B. But again, huge oversight over those, and those plans progress very quickly in collaboration with housing.
Thank you for you covered it. I just think the B&B usage is absolutely emergency short term, isn't it?
Yes,
just in case
absolutely.
that kind of crisis, something happens on a Friday afternoon, we've got to go somewhere. So I think you've said it, Paul. I think we're in a good space around long-term use of B&B. We don't do it. We don't do that in general needs either. So there's a good story around that. And I just reinforce the point. Really tight liaison between housing and children's teams, pretty seamless, I'd say. So pleased with it.
Yeah, for the benefit of those online, Andrew, do you want to just say?
I'm the corporate director of housing and community safety.
Yeah, I think this is a really good example of really good joined up corporate responsibility and corporate parenting. Care Leavers Service and Andrew's housing service have been working really closely together for the last 2 or 3 years, really successfully reduced those in temporary accommodation and in B&B. We've got housing staff in the sort of Care Leavers Service, and as senior leaders, we've also been meeting on the strategy as well, and that success has really been recognised. And I think it's a good example to sort of other departments in the council working together to deliver good corporate parenting.
I've already sort of started off by saying how fantastic it all is. There was one small area that when I read through the Ofsted report that I picked up, and I did mention it in the briefing, and that was on page 32 of the Ofsted report, where they picked up some minor concerns over the lack of police attendance and information could cause delays, which could affect the concerns and actions required to protect children and young people. Just wondered if you wanted to reflect on that a little bit.
Yes, so that was specifically in relation to the ladder investigations, where we had a period of time where there was last year where there was some lack of attendance by the police. That has been picked up, and we've worked closely with the police to make sure that they attend when they are invited, when they need to be there. And Megan Cameron-Brown, our head of QA, has been working closely with the police and to strengthen and improve that.
Well, I can only say it again, congratulations on an outstanding result. And obviously we need to keep the pressure up so that we maintain everything going forward. But I think in summing up, I can only repeat a couple of comments that Ofsted made at the end of their report. Senior leaders make sure they have a high level of attention and oversight of children that they are worried about the most. The DCS's need to know policy ensures that the incidents of concern are not overlooked alongside other effective mechanisms for management oversight of vulnerable children and care leavers, including the very small number of those who live in unsuitable accommodation. And their last comment, practitioners' relentless dedication to ensure that children, families and care leavers receive the support they need shone through in this inspection. I don't think you can get much better than that. So well done, everybody. Thank you. We deserve it.
I don't want to go on from there. But we must.
Yes,
Chair.
we must. So we then get to the highlight of the morning. Can't escape.
Going to generate a round of applause.
Soap in the building.
How would you like us to?
People are very welcome to stay on leave if they feel they have served their purpose this morning. Apart from members of the committee. So just while people get themselves organised, this is item 9, which is our 24-25 Q4 performance report, in which Chris Highway and Liz Crocker will take us through.
Hi.
Who's going to kick off?
Do a very short introduction before handing over to Chris. So I just wanted to take the opportunity. I'm Liz Crocker and I've been recently appointed as the head of strategy, and it's my honour to be leading the recently reformed Policy Intelligence and Performance Service. A portion of today's paper that Chris will talk you through sets very much the direction for the 25-26 reporting year and how we look forward to working with you as a committee to really drive a culture of continuous improvement and organisational learning. And we look forward to bringing you these reports on a quarterly basis going forward. So yeah, I'll hand over to Chris to discuss the paper, but I would also just like to extend my thanks for children's colleagues remaining in the room to help with any of the discussion that may be generated as a result of considering the Q4 performance data and the exceptions. And Andrew. So I'll now just hand over to Chris.
Thank you very much. Chris Highway, Strategic Performance Intelligence and Risk Lead. Today's performance paper seeks to agree the recommendations set out in paragraph 2 in the paper, notably the Q4 January to March 2025 performance acceptance report and actions taken, which is in table 1. Reviews the progress made against the 2024-25 performance actions agreed by the committee in table 2. Approves the performance reporting schedule for 2025-2026 in the context of the strategic performance reporting framework, which is in table 3. If I can draw committee's attention to appendix 1 first of all. Dorset Council is embedding a new strategic performance and risk reporting framework. This framework improves how we measure, monitor and present performance and risk information across the organisation. Appendix 1 provides a visual representation of the framework, demonstrating the context of how this information flows between different parts of the organisation, creating that golden thread of reporting, greater understanding, strategic alignment and transparency of the governance and accountability, both operational and strategic level performance and risk data. It ensures that scrutiny committees like this one have a clear line of sight into strategic priorities and can hold services to account effectively. Part of this work has been identifying and reviewing strategic performance indicators and risks with directorates, and all final indicators and risk suites are now finalised. This has allowed the finalisation of the suite for scrutiny committee, and that is included in this report at appendix 2. Just looking ahead to 2025 and 2026, a future look to reinforce the performance and risk framework from Q1 reporting. We will launch a bespoke dashboard for this committee. It will consolidate all relevant indicators into a single accessible view, and utilising this dashboard, pre-meetings with committees will support targeted evidence-based discussions where we will seek direction on key lines of inquiry for future committee reporting. Work is well underway on completion of the dashboard, and training will be delivered during our September pre-meet on 9th of September in time for Quarter 1 committee on the 26th of November. And finally, on the future look, I just wish to draw your attention to Table 3, which details key dates for committee for reporting for 2025 and 2026. Happy to pause at that point for any questions or comments before moving into committee endorsed actions.
I think that's fairly straightforward.
Perfect.
Yeah, you move on.
Chair. So moving into committee endorsed actions, which is Table 2. 3 actions are complete, which was the summary report detailing the number of newly initiated and completed assessments. An online tool was circulated for crime statistics and the data on the number not in education, employment and training. I note at this point an error in the paper, paragraph 4.8, apologies for this stating that the NEAT action was outstanding or is outstanding. This is a completed action, and I apologise to committee, and a revised version of the paper will be shared. Table 2 that we've referred you to is correct, which states there is one action to be carried forward, which is the health system-wide review of urgent and emergency care, and a report will be brought to committee in future quarters. Moving into the exception report for Quarter 4, we have 3 performance indicators reported as read in Quarter 4. Detailed commentary is in the report, which I'll take as read, if I may. I'm also grateful again for representatives and directors being here to support the wider discussions. Moving into the first indicator, percentage of 16 and 17-year-olds not in education, employment or training. At the end of this quarter, it's 4.2% of 16 and 17-year-olds with needs, representing 338 young people. This is a slight rise of 11 from 327 of that last reporting. And over for some queries at this point.
Going. No questions from the committee at the moment. Simon, nice to see that you've joined us. Simon Fraser-Brown. Do you want to just give us a little bit more context around where we are with the situation?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. It's Simon Fraser-Brown, Head of Commissioning for Family Help and Children's Services, and I've got oversight of our Employment, Education and Training Tracking and Re-engagement team, for which I will at some day come up with a abbreviated title for. We reported to the committee in the April meeting, I think, seem to recollect that we have had some challenges around our rate of young people not in employment, education and training for the duration of this academic year. So our target rate is 3.5%. Last year we were, in the previous academic year, we were sort of largely around the 3.1, 3.2% rate. This year we've been fairly consistently operating at between 4.0% and 4.2%. As of today, it's 4.1, I think, at about 2, and that represents 327 young people. The challenge that we face, or some of the challenges that we face, are we had a larger than a quite significant increase in our cohort size, which we reported previously, and that meant that there was a significant increase in the number of young people looking for places. And we are also, I think, experiencing some of the impact or the long-term impact of COVID, which is sort of recognising that the current Year 12 cohort, the one that we kind of report on here around NEAT, or the ones that we're most concerned about, were in Year 7 when the COVID outbreak came along. So I think we're kind of seeing the legacy of that as those are the students that missed, had a really significant period of time when they were not in school. So we're kind of sort of dealing with the legacy of that. We have been working very hard, and we have managed to kind of, we have seen a little bit of re-engaging. So what happens is we have had quite a lot of success in terms of getting young people back into employment, education, training, but then that is then sort of followed by others leaving. So that's why we've not really been able to get the number back down lower. But just to say that it's not long term, it's not all long term young people being not in employment, education. We have had some success in bringing back young people back into employment and education. We are in a sort of strange time of year, which is obviously it's, you know, what now we've finished the academic term, we are sort of running up to the new group coming in September. And so a lot of our focus has been around ensuring that we have done everything we can to ensure that our current year 11s, we've done everything we can to ensure that they have what's called the September offer, making sure that everybody has a identified place that they will be engaging in employment, education and training from this September. We've commissioned through the Careers Hub, we've commissioned the Education Development Trust to provide basically a call centre for a period of 2 or 3 days once we get the GCSE results in a couple of weeks. And that will act as a kind of reference point, as an advice point and so on. And we're also working very closely with careers leaders and our secondary schools in terms of what happens on results days and supporting them in terms of where they might steer young people to that don't necessarily get the grades that they were looking for. I think that probably gives you enough context for now. If people want to have any questions, then I'm happy to try and respond to those.
Thank you. In the report, it basically says that in Purbeck and other rural areas, there might not be the pathways. And I'm just really interested to know what you feel the pathways could be. If you could have anything, what would it be? And I would also, I mean, I know the North better than any other area. And I can point to a situation where we've got only came to me yesterday, youngster who would like to go to college, but there's no transport that would take him to that would cost less than £700 a year, and the family simply can't afford it. And I think this is such a problem, and I would really like to see, can we find a mechanism to have an alternative provision as they do with Yeovil or Weymouth, but in the north of the county, that can actually offer a pathway to these people, that therefore transport is not an issue. What are your thoughts, Simon, on this?
So I obviously don't know the circumstances of the individual or specific location within North Dorset that you're referring to, but I am aware that Yeovil College, for example, subsidise a significant amount of transport routes quite heavily. I think that at one point they were providing free transport from a number of locations within Dorset, both West and North Dorset, that would enable young people to access FE through Yeovil College. It is also my understanding that Weymouth College do provide similar subsidised transport as well. However, I also recognise that there is a challenge around having the right course locally. And, you know, if you are a young person living in North Dorset, you're probably looking at an hour's journey to that FE, even if you're accessing that transport for free, and then an hour journey at the end of the day, quite often on long days, which many of the vocational courses are provided, because they're quite often sort of 9 till 4. So you're looking at sort of 8-9 hour days for those young people. So we recognise that is a bit of a challenge. I think there is a piece of work that we might want to engage with some of our sixth form provision around how they can continue. There is some collaboration, particularly in the north, and we might want to support them in that conversation about how they could be some additional collaboration, which might open up some more vocational courses and some more alternative pathways than in that part of the county. That might be quite a useful thing to be able to do. We have also undertaken a piece of work recently over the last couple of years around increasing the availability of supported internships. So those supported internships are, well, they're what they say on the tin really, but they are open to young people with education and healthcare plans. And they provide a mixture of education and supported employment. So the work experience, the young person would do a range of different work placements as part of that course, and at the end of the programme the intention would be that there is a job opportunity for them to move into. So Thales, for example, operate one just over the border in North Dorset, which is accessible through Yeovil College as the education provider, and then they would do work experience with Thales. Dorset Council is exploring having something available towards in time for the 26-27 academic year. And there is also a programme available with the education being provided by SWAREC, which is available through ASDA, and they're being supported by an organisation called DFN Project Search that do a lot of the kind of work-based support for those young people. So there are a range of options available, but equally one of the other challenges for us is some of that additional support. We recognise that many of our young people that are not in employment, education, training are not necessarily ready to immediately re-engage in further education as in light of the situation you've just described. Many of them require more intensive support. They require additional support with their core skills like English and maths and so on. And so some of those programs have been really useful, and we've been able to access some funding for those, but having a ready-made resource that could do that would be a useful thing, I think. But we need to find the resourcing and funding for that.
Okay, thank you. So you talk about the collaboration perhaps in the north. Is there a way we can be more involved in that or try and drive anything forward? Because that £700 I mentioned was actually using the subsidised transport. What I also know is that from data from, say, the local high school in Sturminster, 46% of youngsters do not want to go back to sixth form at the high school, and they're not particularly academic. They want to get into something more technical. They want to use their hands, and I just don't think we have enough opportunities that they can go into, and that's something that I would. Can we find a way of driving something that helps that cohort?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can certainly explore it. I know that in the past, Yeovil College have delivered from satellite locations, and that's something that we could potentially explore. Again, the challenge for them would be the funding and resourcing of that, and that is the really big challenge in this space. However, looking slightly longer term, we are aware that there is a skills bill in preparation. The current government seem to be very committed to getting our young people and our young adults into work, and so I am kind of watching in anticipation as to what vision is within that might allow us to open up vocational routes that are located in some of our more rural locations, and how we might support our sixth form provision to open up to more vocational courses, because I do understand the situation you've got, and Dorset is, I wouldn't say we're unique, but we are unusual in having our FE provision largely delivered through sixth forms. If you look over the border in Somerset and Hampshire, for example, a lot of their provision is done through large FE provisions, which are kind of a bit more more widely spread. We don't necessarily have the same model, and actually what we find is our young people tend to access FE provision over the border in Bournemouth and Poole College, Yeovil College, Wiltshire College, and so on. So yes, it would be useful to have something vocationally based in some of our more rural areas if we could do that.
Thank you very much. And finally, finally.
Just before you move on to a different point, what you didn't mention was Kingston Moorwood. Our own vocational college. That's very much land-based, but they also bring youngsters in from all over the county. I know that there is a Kingston Moorwood bus from Verwood, for example, which is my area. So they are reaching out. So whether there should be a conversation, or the area around Sturminster, to see if.
I don't think they do bricklaying and things like that there.
No. So.
Those courses are available at Weymouth.
Yeah, so just to pick up, that's part of the offer that I was talking about before, that they're expanding at Weymouth. And another thing that we're looking at as a result of some discussions we've had with our learning centres, and also a group of parents who have kind of raised to us some of the challenges they have with their young person when they're been in a learning centre or been in the specialist provision, and then have to go on to the next steps and what's available to them, and how sometimes that's when they can drop out of the system and really struggle. We're exploring the resource provision model that we currently have in schools, which is kind of sort of bespoke packages for children with greater needs. We're looking at how we can replicate that at Kingston Moorwood. And just kind of, we're really sort of exploring that alongside the extended offer that's at Weymouth College. So really kind of, you know, just having a look at that whole post-16 piece and how we can meet the needs of more young people who do have, you know, challenges and who really struggle in that next step.
It's just access to affordable transport. And just finally, I remember when we last spoke about this, I asked whether there was a correlation between those that are neat and those that had very low attendance previously. And I don't know whether anything has been done to actually drill down into that and just see if there's something that we could hook into at an earlier stage to stop them. And that's probably a separate piece of work, but is that something we might be able to look at or set up a task group to look at it? I look around the room and just not sure. Can we? What do you think?
Yeah, we did do a pilot and a piece of work, and I just need to go and reference that in more detail and come back to you, which was specifically linked to Dorchester Learning Centre. It was around the severe absence project. And also sitting alongside Simon, I think you could come in around the Marvels project, was just, you know, those kind of opportunities for those young people who really struggled with attendance, and how we kind of support them in bridging those gaps and then meeting their needs in their next stage. So there have been a couple of projects that have taken place, which we could bring to you.
Yeah,
Really like
I can add to that if it's helpful. The Marvels program, we ran the Marvels program initially. I'm going to test my maths now, but 2 years, so 2 academic years ago. Very, very high success, very high rate in retention of groups of young people that we would expect to potentially drop out of college before the end of term 1 in year 12. And we had an 84% retention rate, so 84%. And we are talking about young people who were in our learning centres and who then were supported into FE or employment education training during year 12, and we had an 84% retention rate, which was significantly higher than we would expect for that cohort to be in. We managed to extend the Marvels programme with some different funding that we put together for the second year. And we are currently applying to JP Morgan for a pot of money, which is being made available to 10 local authorities nationally. But we know that they really liked, they administered the first Marvels funding, and we know that they really liked it. So we are quietly keeping our fingers crossed. The application needs to be in on Friday, and we are applying for 3 years worth of funding to extend that programme, starting, we hope to get an answer in time to launch in September, I think is what we're working towards. In terms of some of the data, there is a tool that's been released by the Department for Education recently called a Risk of Neat Indicator tool, and I think it would be worth us looking at some of that. You know, it's not it's not an overstretch of the imagination to know that in year 7 and 8 we can get a pretty good indication as to who might struggle to make a transition into year 12 and who might be at risk of becoming not in employment education and training. There is a specific tool that might allow us to do that, and then some of that is around how we utilise the entirety of our learning and belonging offer to support those young people to have meaningful engagement in their education, in whatever that is, whatever meaningful means to them. And those that do are then less likely to become not in employment education training. So, you know, so I think there is a longer term piece of work around how we use some of our data to identify young people as early as possible and provide the right support as they go through secondary school.
Thank you.
Andy Todd, Coal Hill, Wimborne, Minster East. I struggle with the rigidity of cohort-based educational structures. Children, we all know, develop at different speeds and have different needs. And it's an uncomfortable suit of clothes to wear. It's not flexible enough to accommodate. But I'm interested to know whether we've ever done any mapping of correlation between geography and the provision of educational support. Go back to what Carol was saying earlier. You know, the further away you are from your further education college, the less likely it is that you're going to go. If there are ways that we can fill the gap, I would love to hear what they are and how we can communicate them to our residents.
And Beth, do you? I don't know. It's difficult because I'm not in the room. I can't read the cues. I don't know if you've got anything to start with, Beth, and we can then.
We're in the process of revising our send capital strategy, which will become our send sufficiency strategy. So we are doing mapping with regards to educational needs and localities and transport, and then looking at where we will face resource provisions, which is what I was talking about before. But in terms of that precise cohort that you're talking about, Councillor Todd, I think we need to do that as a separate piece of work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking, Carol has sort of asked if we can look at this a bit more. There's a task to finish group. What I'm going to suggest is maybe we have a discussion outside of this meeting to look at how we would scope something out. And then perhaps at the next meeting we can bring it back, and then members can then make a decision on where you want to go with it. So we can sort of, see where the real tensions are, and what the outcomes are we think we might want to try and get, and then see where we go with it. Okay. Moving on, Chris.
I'm sorry. You said in the room. Moving on to the second one, percentage of children achieving basics in English and Maths at Key Stage 4. 42% of children achieve the standard in English and Maths, and national average and regional Southwest average incidentally is 46%, so Dorset just under that, which they're ranking in the benchmark in the 150 local authorities at 97th. Discussion on this point.
Do you want to add anything at this point before I open up to the floor?
Yep, something that I will add actually is just because it kind of ties in with what we were talking about previously, and that's just some of the work that we're doing with Key Stage 4, a piece of work that which came off the back of our education conference, and there was a national report that was written, the largest ever kind of survey done around engagement of young people in school, and it's called the Impact Ed report. We are working with Impact Ed because they presented at our education conference to look at engagement in secondary schools particularly. So we are running a piece of work in collaboration with our secondary schools for next academic year, just looking at staff and pupil engagement and the correlation between that and outcomes. So that is a piece of work that we're doing specifically to kind of support in raising attainment and improving attendance at Key Stage 4, which obviously relates to these outcomes and to some of the discussions that we were having before.
Questions? I think you've got that one covered.
And just to say, obviously, with the Key Stage 4 data, I mean, this specific KPI is in relation to those achieving grade 5 to 9 at GCSE, and 21st of August we will get our results. So this is a kind of a fairly sort of static measure, but obviously changes annually. Last year we did see an improvement. We've done some really targeted work with our secondary schools around peer challenge within the last year. We've really encouraged them to work as a collaboration, which maybe they hadn't done as much previously. And they've been reviewing each other's specific curriculum areas to include SEND. So, we're really hopeful that our results will improve.
No doubt we will get press releases on results day about how well youngsters have done.
Yes, we've been putting those in the background. So.
Chris, you've got your hand up.
No, I've got my microphone on. Thank you, Chris Kippax, Yepminster Ward. No, I just comment really, very pleased to hear that last remark about how schools have been encouraged to collaborate, because I know this is an issue raised whenever the last time was we looked at this. So it's good to know. And that was it really. Just wanted to make that point, and as a supportive remark for action's been undertaken.
Thank you. Paul.
Just to add that whilst we don't know this year's Key Stage 4, we do know that Key Stage 2 outcomes have improved this year on last year. So we're pleased with that.
And actually, I would put that down to collaboration again. So we've been working across the trusts, across our maintained sectors, and running pilots on different elements of teaching and learning related to Key Stage 2. We've also had a really successful project for our disadvantaged children through Action Tutoring, where it's done some very bespoke tutoring, which has been really successful at Westmore's Middle School. And we're rolling that out to a further 10 primary settings from September. So we have a cross collaboration group through Dorset MAP leaders and our West Dorset maintained schools that are working on different projects relating to Key Stage 2.
Thank you. May I through you, Chair? Is there any difference between the maintained schools and the MATs at all in terms of outcomes with exams? Is there anything glaring or not really?
Not in that sense, because there are the differences within the trusts, the different trusts, but not in terms of, more so at our secondary sector, there is a difference.
Yes, I'm specifically asking about the secondary at Key Stage 4.
Yeah, our maintained secondary schools perform really, really well.
Do they over and above the MATs?
In a lot of cases, yes.
Really? That's interesting.
But I've been doing quite a lot of work with the DFE as well around that, and around how we can support some of our trust secondary schools. We've got the RISE teams that are coming in and supporting one particular locality around outcomes. So we do have those kind of regular discussions.
That was one of the biggest challenges when they brought in academies, because we used to have a really, really good, Dorset County used to have a really good school improvement team, which schools used to buy into that service, and money was delegated to the schools, and then they all went academy. And very sadly, that team was disbanded because schools said, no, we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think there's one of the sad legacies of the move to academies, which I never supported, but there we go.
Yeah, I mean, we have got that real strength, and we've got a small school improvement team that works with our maintained schools through our de-delegated fund. And, and that's proving to be, that is really successful.
That's the key to it, is having that positive support. Not just, we're always here, that the big bad authority, the fact that, we can help improve as well in a positive way. Really good. So shall we move on, Chris?
Yeah, final indicator rate of permanent exclusions for all schools. This is an improving direction of travel, rate at 0.6% down, additional 0.04. Service intervention showing positive impact, and monitoring continues by the Learning Centre panel.
Yep. So I'd just like to say, I think part of the work we've been doing with our learning centres and looking at how learning centre places operate has really supported in this. And the panel process that goes, that operates to get young people into learning centres. Learning centres are now operating on a kind of 12-week placement, so it's an intervention. We've also employed 4 reintegration officers into our learning centres, which work between the learning centre and the school, which the child has come, so that when the child has finished their 12-week placement at the learning centre, they've then got a much better chance of reintegrating back into their mainstream setting, and at less risk of permanent exclusion. Also, we have our secondary heads who sit, and some primary heads who sit on our learning centre panel, so they're very much involved in the whole process, and we think that's really strengthened and supported in reduction of permanent exclusions.
Good, it's improving, good.
It again, isn't it? It's working together. It's the key to everything. Yeah. So, Chris.
That's all.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so in our recommendation, you're asked to note the performance exceptional actions undertaken, which was table 1. Review the progress made against the 24-25 by committee 2, and moving forward, approve the performance reporting schedule for 25-26 within the context of the strategic performance reporting framework. Believe that we're a bit further forward now with the public health indicators, because in the report that we've got published, they were missing. Also, they needed to be organised, but I think we've landed on that now.
Yeah, I'm very sorry if that's the case. We've identified something else to correct within the report, so we'll republish it with the full set of data. You're absolutely right, that should have been in there.
Yeah. So we'll just get that circulated to you after the meeting, just so that you're aware. Obviously, we're moving into a new format, new indicators. So go with the flow to begin with. A lot of work has been done in the background. I've had many meetings with these guys, looking at some of the performance indicators we had before, some of the issues that we'd raised about some of the nuances in the data. So I hope that a lot of them have been addressed. There are some new ones as well. So please run with it for a little while. If you do pick up anything, can we please just make people aware? But can we save making any changes until we've had a chance for the new system to bed in, so that we can then see how it works? I think it just make everybody's life easier in the short term.
Chair, may I just add one point? Sorry, I think today's discussion has been incredibly helpful, and I just wanted to pick up one of the points that will hopefully improve reports going forward. Some of the discussion that we've had kind of live in the meeting today, we're hopeful that we may be able to flag some of those lines of inquiry earlier within the pre-meets with yourselves, armed with the data. And so some of the deeper dives that you're kind of wishing to follow up on can be identified in advance of this committee, so that the paper can better reflect your interest, and we can pull in the detail earlier. So hopefully we're kind of on the front foot, as it were. So we walk you through the data with that dashboard, we identify lines of inquiries with you, and we work with colleagues in the development of a really kind of focused committee report to really draw that discussion out in the meeting. So I just wanted to highlight that point.
Another point as well, wasn't there? So the timings have improved as well, haven't they? Do you just want to quickly cover that?
Yeah, I think that's
it is in the report, but
yeah, and I think that's sort of what I was trying to drive at in that comment. So we are, as the data becomes available in the dashboard, we're meeting with you all as a committee in that pre-meet a lot earlier, and then it allows us the time to write a really aligned committee report. So we've identified all of the meetings that we will be attending with that performance report as part of table 3, and you'll see that the pre-meets with you all take place kind of a couple of months or a month beforehand, so we've got time to really tailor that report. So hopefully, Chair, does that answer the question?
Thank you. Bridget.
But we're not, Councillor Bridget Burwell, report ward, we're not in those pre-meets though, are we?
Yes.
So you will be.
Formal.
Oh, okay,
Formal
yeah, sorry.
Not the chairman's briefing.
No, okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah, so they're in addition to the chairman's briefing.
Yeah, yes.
Apologies.
So I can't see any hands up anywhere. Thank you both very much. I think we've got enough there, haven't we? Yep. Okay. So nearly there, guys. The work programme, you've got that in front of you. We are going to be getting a briefing on the NHS trust proposals as is in the process of being arranged. I don't have a date yet, but I think it's important for us to understand what the changes are and how it affects everybody. Is there anything that anyone has picked up that we obviously have had something in the meeting this morning about looking at school attendance and the impact on needs? Is there anything else that is sort of bubbling up that people might feel they want to have a deeper dive at?
Will the health area bring in sort of integrated neighbourhood teams and so on, whether that where that's going at all or not really?
Certainly do give an update. It might be separate to what you're asking the trust.
I don't know.
Yeah, this is about the changes that are happening following the abolition of NHS.
Right, okay, so that won't necessarily bring in the INTs then.
No, so what I can do is ask George to just find out a little bit more about where that's going, and then again see if it's something we can scope. And doing healthcare assessments is still bubbling away in the background. I have had information on that, but I've been distracted elsewhere on other things, so I will come back to that. Jane.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a number of areas identified as potential risk in 25-26, and I'm just wondering how the committee can keep track on some of those. It just has lines, no planned action, or they're just statements of fact or statements of potential risk.
That's part of our paper, is it?
Are you referring back to?
Sorry, could have been. I'm sorry. This is what being unwell does to you.
And moving on.
Yeah,
oh God. Anyway, that'll be my question on that one.
Yeah, so the risks, sorry, Liz, I have introduced myself. Yes, sorry. Councillor Somper, the risks are presented in the paper as static lines, purely for kind of formatting reasons, because there is a lot more data that sits behind that, and that will be fully available within the dashboard. So your dashboard will present both performance and risk, and you'll be able to look in detail at both and be able to kind of, we can reflect your areas of interest across both within the paper. So this is just indicative list. Obviously, risks don't remain static either. So your dashboard will always be updated with any new emerging risks as well. So just to say it's for reference, but it will form part of your dashboard with a lot more detail.
Good, because there's quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
You will be drowned in data.
I'm sure there are plans, action plans for every single one of them.
Right, with that, I should jump back to where we are on the agenda. So I think we just about dealt with the forward plan. We have no exempt business. So in that case, at 12:02, I will formally close the meeting and thank you all for your attendance and your contribution.
Thank you.